Welcome to the podcast, Let the Prophet Speak. Today we will begin the study of the book of Zephaniah, that's Zephaniah, the prophet. And today we will study the beginning of chapter 1. So this is Zephaniah 1a. Just by way of introduction, actually the first verse will introduce this prophet to us and his lineage and the time in which he said his prophecies. So let's read the first verse. Devar Adonai Asher Haya. This is the word of God that was said El Zephaniah to Zephaniah ben Cushi, the son of Cushi, ben Gedaliah, ben Amariah, ben Chizkiah, who was the son of Gedaliah, the son of Amariah, the son of Chizkiah. The point being to give his lineage, all the way back to his great-great-grandfather, Chizkiyahu, the king Hezekiah. So this prophet had a royal lineage and was a member of the royal family. And when did he live? Bimei Yoshiyahu, during the days of the king Yoshiyahu ben Ammon, the son of Ammon, Melech Yehuda. Now Yoshiyahu was the son of Ammon, who was the son of Manasseh, who was the son of Chizkiah. So the king was his, I guess like second cousin, once removed or something like that. Anyway, because we know that Zephaniah said his prophecies during the days of Yoshiyahu, or known in English as Josiah, we know that Yoshiyahu, during the first 10 years of his kingship, was days when the people of Israel were still rampant idol worship and rampant corruption and so on. And we know, though, that about 10 years into his reign, he, as the story is told in other places in the prophets, that he found a Torah in the temple, and he taught it to the people and brought about a major revolution, bringing the people back to God, getting rid of the idol worshiping, and bringing people back to a righteous life. So Josiah was responsible for a major positive turnaround in the kingdom, and therefore he's remembered as one of the great kings. His father Ammon and his grandfather Manasseh were very evil kings and reigned for a long time and led the people in the wrong direction. Now, this prophecy, it seems, would have been said during the pre-revolution times, the times before Yoshiyahu turned things around, before Josiah turned things around, when the people were still corrupt. So many would say that Zephaniah, therefore, was one of the few successful prophets, so to speak. He criticized the people, warned them of oncoming destruction, and then the people did repent, they did turn around, they did change. Whether or not Zephaniah was responsible for that is unclear, but surely the teachings of people like him, Zephaniah, would have been, at least to some degree, responsible for bringing the peoples around. I think that's a reasonable thing to assume. This follows the book of Habakkuk, who we said had prophesied around the same time, also, which is why these two books are next to each other. So, what is the prophecy being stated? So let's see. Go on to verse 2. Asof, asaf, kol, me al pnei ha'adamah nu'um Adonai. That was verse 2 in Hebrew. The translation would be as follows. Asof, asaf generally is understood to be a language of at least in this context, a language of destruction. I am going to destroy all from the face of the earth, so says God. Now, it is interesting, this choice of words, asof, asaf, and we're going to see these words repeat themselves several times in the future verses. The word asof in Hebrew it usually means to gather something together, to bring something close, to group things together. We see it there used also in the context of destruction, and we see it used in the context of death. So one way of understanding this is God is saying, I'm going to destroy everything. We see something very similar in Jeremiah 8:13, where Jeremiah talks about Asof Asifim. I shall destroy them, so says God, where it means destruction. Now, but we also see sometimes Asof, to gather, is actually a good thing. We saw in Micha chapter 4, verse 6, we saw the following, where Micah says, the Osva Hatzoleah, I will gather unto me the cripples. And God is saying, I will gather them, meaning a good thing. I'm going to bring them closer to God. We also saw it, Asof Yaakov, also in Micha and Micah chapter 2. I will gather Jacob together. So because we see this meaning in so many places, meaning so many different things, I wanted to suggest, another place where it's important to mention is we see that language in reference to death, as we see the most famous in Genesis 49:33, when it talks about the death of Jacob. It says, Vaye Osef el Amav, he was gathered up unto his nation. In other words, he was gathered, his soul was brought back to join those that are in the other world, so to speak, together with them. I think that the context, of course, is important. And of course, over here, it means some sort of destruction or something bad. However, I think the actual root of the word is always the same. What it really means is to gather something, to bring something together, to bring something close. And when God uses this language, because here it says Noam Hashem, this is God himself speaking. When God uses this language in a bad way, in other words, in a way that sounds like it's punishment, what he means is, I'm gathering you close to me in order to judge you, in order to check you out. And when the people are evil, asaf is something scary, because punishment is, when God brings you close, he's taking a close look. It's like when a judge says, come here, come to the front, stand on the stand so that you can be judged. That's what it means in both places. So when God uses it in a context of Lasof Hatzoleah, I'm going to gather the crippled, I'm going to gather the poor towards me. What God is saying, I'm going to bring them close to me, and I'm going to treat them properly. I'm going to be good to them. I'm going to have mercy on them. I'm going, and when it talks about death, it means I'm taking you back to your source. I'm bringing you closer to me. But it could also mean, right, so to bring something close for judgment, to bring something close and therefore condemn it. So that's why, it's important when we look at the next verse as well. So Asof, I'm going to read it again. Asof, Asaf, I will gather, call everything me'al pnei adam. When I do judgment, God says, I'm going to judge everything. In other words, whether you're good or bad, whether you're up or down, right or left, everything, everyone, no matter where you live on the world, every single creature on the face of the earth, God says. In verse 3, Asaf Adam, I'm going to gather all human beings, uvehema, and animals. Asaf of hashamayim udegei hayam, I'm going to gather the birds of the sky and the fish of the sea. So God is saying, I'm going to gather it all. But ultimately, when I gather it to me, what's going to happen? What's going to be the result? Since God is a God of justice, I'm going to judge and I'm going to punish the wicked. V'hamach shelos es harishaim. And when I gather everything, I'm going to gather all of the machshelos. Machshelos here would mean the stumbling blocks, all of the things that make people sin, all of the issues. I'm going to judge it all. The evil ones, the evil people, the Rishaim. And as the Ibn Ezra points out, that the beginning is universal. The beginning is saying, I'm going to gather all humans, I'm going to gather all animals, I'm going to gather all birds and everything. But then what am I going to punish? I'm going to punish the evil. I'm going to gather the evil ones. And then I'm going to cut off the human beings. me'al pnei ha'adam. In other words, I'm not going to be punishing the animals. I'm not going to be punishing the fish. I'm not going to be punishing the birds of the sky. I'm not going to be punishing those that are not rishoim, that are not wicked. But rather, I'm going to aim at the Adam, the people who are wicked. Noam Adonai, so says God. Now, I know this is not exactly the way most of the translators and most of the commentaries translate this. But if we translate the word asof, meaning to gather, rather than literally to punish, then everything reads beautifully and everything makes sense. And then it also continues very well. It progresses beautifully into the next verse. Because God has just said, I'm going to look at everything. I'm going to gather everything. I'm going to judge everything. And then what am I going to do? I'm going to punish the guilty. And I am going to stretch my hand over the people of Judah. These are the people that Zephaniah is addressing this to. So he's saying, after God looks at the whole world, he's going to zero in on you because you care about you. Yeah, he's going to zero in on other places too, but that's their problem. Now I'm talking to you about your problem. He was a member of the royal family. He lived in Jerusalem. He was standing and saying in Jerusalem. God's going to talk to the whole country he's going to look at, and he's going to look right here in this city of Jerusalem. And what am I going to do? V'hichrati min hamakom hazeh. When I said before, I'm going to cut off v'hichrati et ha'adam, when I said in verse 3, I am now explaining who is that I'm going to cut out. I'm going to cut off and punish min hamakom hazeh, from this place, et she'ar ha'baal, all the remnants of the idol of Baal, et shem hakimarim, all of the names of all of the priests that are worshiping the Baal, and the priests that are together with the priests that worship the idol. V'et hamishtachavim al hagagos, and those of you that bow on the rooftops, litzvah hashemayim, you bowing to the beings in the sky, the sun, the moon you're worshiping, the constellations you're worshiping. V'et hamishtachavim, and those that bow, but hanishbaim ladonai, when they speak, they swear to God. In other words, they speak as if they're swearing to God, but they also v'hanishbaim b'malkam, at the same time they are swearing to Malkam, the name of an idol. And those people who turn their backs upon God and don't even bother pretending, like the verse 5 was talking about those that they speak like they're God, but they also worshiping others. But those that don't even bother and they simply just turn their backs on God. And those people that don't search Him out, and don't turn towards Him and don't turn towards God, those are the ones that I'm going to punish. Has Mipnei Adonai Elohim. Silence. It will be silent before God. Remember, in Habakkuk, verse 2, we also use this similar language. Chapter 2 in Habakkuk, chapter 2, verse 20. It says, Hasmi panav kol haaretz. The land is silent before God. The silence we explained then, and it means the same thing now. Being silent before God means accepting His judgment. What the Habakkuk over there used this same term when he was referring to understanding that God judges, and God judges the righteous, and God judges those that are not righteous, and God's punishment will be placed on those that He feels He deserves it. So you must be silent before Him. There's nothing to argue with. Ki karov yom Adonai, because the day of God is coming. Now this day of God could be seen as a reference of Zephaniah referring to the punishment that's going to come, the destruction that's about to come. Historically, the destruction of Jerusalem, which was going to come, soon enough afterwards, or the destruction that may have been averted when Josiah decided to turn the people towards God. But when we talk about this day of God, we also have to understand that these are referring to the ultimate day of God. The day of judgment, the day in the future, whenever, wherever that will be, but the day when it all will go down, so to speak, the day when true justice will be revealed. Ki hechin Adonai zevach. God has prepared a sacrifice. Hektish kiru'av. When it says, refers to God as preparing a sacrifice, you remind us of what we said in Isaiah chapter 34, verse 6. When God says, which was talking about also over there the ultimate day of God, the day when justice will be meted out, the day when the evil will suffer. Isaiah in chapter 34 used the same language. He said, "Ki zevach laHashem b'Batzra." There is sacrifices happening in Batzra. There it was referring to God destroying the evil people of Batzra, of Edom. But here that Zephaniah is using the same language. God is preparing a sacrifice, meaning He is going to punish the wicked. Hikdish kiruav. He has set aside those that are invited to be there to participate when that sacrifice is occurring. Some understand this to mean the animals which are going to be there to eat the corpses, and kind of referring back to Deuteronomy, Devarim 28, where we had the verse there which states that I'm sorry. And your corpses will be for food for the birds and the animals. So that's one way of understanding this. Hikdish Guruav, God is inviting them to the feast over the sacrifice of the people that He's going to punish. Another way to understand this, that would be the Radak and the Metzudos translate it that way. Rashi translates it a little differently, and God is inviting His armies to come and punish the people, which would then be a reference to Nebuchadnezzar, to the king of Babylon, who is now being predicted that he's going to come and destroy the people of Jerusalem. However, I think a much easier way is to leave this a lot more generic, and rather than defining exactly what He's talking about, God is just saying He's inviting all of the Kiruav, everyone, to come to this feast, just like He started off saying, Asaf Asaf, I am gathering everyone together. Everyone has to come together because I'm going to judge everyone. I'm going to judge everything. And out of those, I'm going to pick the ones that deserve suffering, the ones that deserve punishment, and the ones that deserve to be redeemed. V'haya, and it will be, and this is exactly how it continues when it says in verse 8, V'haya b'yom zevach Adonai, and it will be on the day of God's sacrifice. What am I going to do? I'm going to pick out the ones that are guilty. Ufakati al asarim, and specifically I'm going to aim at the leaders. The leadership, we saw this many times in Isaiah and in as many of the other prophets that we studied, that the corrupt leadership was one of the key problems. Ufakati al asarim, and I will punish the officers, the Bnei Melech, and on the princes. And remember, Zephaniah himself was a prince, and he is criticizing his own family. V'al halovshim malbush nachri, and I will punish all of those who dress in a foreign or a strange clothing. Now, what does this mean, malbush nachri? There's a lot of different explanations for this overall. However, I am going to some assumes that it means I'm sorry. Ma'abush Nachri is rather than a strange clothing. What this means is one way of explaining this is Ma'abush Nachri, strange clothing, meaning they're dressing in the cloaks of those that worship idols. That's how many of the commentaries see this. That they're like, they put on the clothing or the garments of the priest that serves the idol. However, another way of understanding this is Mabush Nachri, meaning someone else's clothes, meaning stolen, right? Those that dress up in things that they've either literally stolen or from someone else, or they are dressing in clothing that they are wearing because they gained the means to get those clothing through illicit ways. Those that oppress others, that oppress the poor, and that would be specifically on the princes and the wealthy people who oppress the poor and thereby gain those clothing that they're wearing. And that would be called Shema Bush Nachri, and that would be kind of like the Radak kind of explains it that way. that ufakadeti al kol hadoleg al hamifton bayomahu. This is verse 9. And I'm going to punish everyone that jumps over the threshold on that day. Bayomahu almost always in the prophets means that day out there in the future. Now, what does this mean, those who jump over the threshold? One way of understanding it is there was a custom in those days in the Philistines, when they worshipped their god Dagon, they wouldn't step on the threshold; they would jump over it. So this would then be a reference to those who worship idols. Those that translated out the foreign garment and that we just ended in the last verse would translate it this way. If they assume the foreign garment means the garments of those that worship idols, then this is referring to those that jump over the threshold. Those that explain it meaning foreign, meaning someone else's clothing, meaning stolen, then the doleg al miftan, jumping over the threshold, is a reference to jumping. It went sneaking into someone's house, running into somebody else's house to take their things. And that would fit better with the end of the verse, because it continues. It says, those that jump over the threshold to take other people's things away, hamimalaim beit adonehem, that they then turn around and fill up their master's house with chamas, with things that are taken with lawless violence, mirma, and lies. So again, so this would fit better with the second translation. Those that dress in other people's garments, those that invade other people's private space in order to take their things, those are the people who come, when they come before God, they fill up God's house, the house of their master, with chamas, with things that they shouldn't be theirs, either because they literally took it, like actually went and took it and stole it, or they took it by oppressing others, creating a system of justice that takes away from the poor and gives to the rich, umirma, and lying and cheating. It all boils down in the end to chamas umirma. It all boils down to interpersonal violence, oppression, and lying and fraud and cheating. That's what Zephaniah's vision boils down to. God will gather the people together on that day, and he will judge the people. And who will he judge? The Rishaim, the evil ones. Thank you so much for studying Zephaniah 1a together with us. Looking forward to finishing the first chapter in our next podcast.